What up, guys? Welcome back to the Deskbound Therapy Podcast, Episode 2. Today I'm talking with my good friend, Ren Jones, a Fitness Jones Training. And let's start by just introducing himself. So go ahead, Ren. Letting everybody know what you're all about.
Hey, David, thanks so much for the invitation, first of all. Super excited to be here. And I guess the best background on me is to start with how I met David. Because we've known each other for like a year now or something, right? Like more than a year.
A little bit over. We met June 2017.
Yep. So David was jumping out of a helicopter, and I was jumping. No, that's not what happened. David and I actually met in Toronto at a fitness summit, the Strong Pro Summit, that was given by John Goodman from the PTDC. You guys don't know John Goodman or PTDC, you definitely want to check him out. But we met there, and we were sort of, we were part of a group of folks that were there primarily for the summit, but also we were there to sort of talk about our experiences with going through the online training certification that they offer, OTA. So I actually met David the very first day getting into Toronto because he was at the offices where John Goodman is, and I initially thought that David was one of the staff because everybody knew his name. Later, as I met David, I realized why everybody always knew his name. And if you guys know David, you know why. Because David's he's just one of those guys that knows everybody. He just is. I was like, oh, he must work here. But then when we got to the summit, I was like, does he work at the summit too? Everybody's like, hey, David, what's up, David? David, how's it going? David's just a really personable guy. We clicked right away, hit it off immediately. He sat beside me because he knew how super smart I was, and he wanted some of it to rub off on him. So that's how we met. So I got into this business through family tragedy. Unfortunately, my older brother passed away due to a heart attack in 2007. 4 years later, my sister, who was an addict, decided to drink and get in her car, and she hit a tree and died instantly. And 2 years after that, my mother passed away due to stroke complications. And I know that sounds like a sad story, guys. I don't want to bring the podcast down, but on our side, David and I, we're always talking to our clients about the why. And I think it's unusual that clients don't ask us about our why as much because we know how much the why matters. But those incidents of family tragedy are what got me to leave a fairly lucrative corporate position in insurance and dive in to the quicksand that is the fitness and wellness world. So again, I'm really pleased to be here. Thanks so much, David, for inviting me, man. I feel like I should have been on episode number 1, but I'm not going to be salty about it. No, but seriously, I appreciate it, man. I'm very, very pleased to be here.
Thanks for the intro. Yeah, it was actually, when I met you at the conference, you just seemed like you're a very friendly guy too. So it was really good to find like-minded people, especially in the fitness industry, because there's always going to be people who are going to put you down and don't want you to be there. So it's good to have your network and your team and just your friends. Because again, at the end of the day, we're helping people and we're in the business of people. We want to, be personable.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about. It was really interesting what you said about clients asking us our why, because I've never actually considered talking about it myself. It's like maybe I have here and there, but I never frequently, when I meet clients or get new clients, kind of talk about my background, and that's actually quite interesting. And I like the point you said about family, because I find it's often hard to motivate family because it's not really about the motivation, but we'll get to later into the podcast when we talk about motivation versus lifestyle. For now, we're going to start by just talking about the nutrition mindset for long-term success. And I know you are all about the habits versus and finding what works best for the clients. And I find that is good. And from my experience, it's all about taking the initiative yourself to experiment, find what works best for you after you kind of learn those basic nutritional principles. Because a lot of times you can, when I started, I would just eat healthy, and I lost a bunch of weight. I started losing weight in high school. So I just started eating healthy and the weight started coming off. But then as I started working out, it became a bit more complicated because there's a lot more factors involved with the protein and all that. At first, I would just kind of cut out my starches and stuff, but it's cool to kind of be able to experiment because I tried counting for a long time, my intake, and then I tried intuitive eating, and I find it's all about having that balance because I find I would get the most stressed and the least motivated when I was trying to do too much at once.
Oh, that's absolutely true, David. And I love what you said about sort of tailoring things to the individual, right? Because I think in the context of nutrition specifically, what we do all too often is we try to find this nutrition box, right? And then we tell people to try to stuff themselves into that box. No matter how big the box is, no matter how small it is, no matter how awkwardly shaped the box is, we tell people, hey, this is the box of nutrition. You need to conform every part of your life to this and squeeze yourself in it, or you're going to fail. And oftentimes, that's exactly what happens. You know, the person fails because we're trying to squeeze a person's personality into a box. And I'll give you two really quick examples of what I mean by that. These two things are pretty common to most of the folks that are listening out there. So you've got something like intermittent fasting, right? IF. And intermittent fasting basically means that you have a period during the day where you eat. Then you have a long fasting period, and there's different ratios of how long you eat to how long you don't eat. But to keep it pretty basic, you have a period of the day where you eat, and then you have a long period of the day where you don't eat. Hence the term intermittent fasting. And you take somebody that is an office worker who has food readily available, or somebody whose personality type is just that they like to eat a little something every 2 to 3 hours. By the way, eating every 2 to 3 hours does not burn extra calories. That's not science. That's old fiction. I don't want you guys to think that that's what I'm trying to tell you to do. But a person who just likes to eat every once in a while, you know, every 2.5 hours, they like to have some grapes, or, you know, they want to have a sandwich or anything like that. And then they go on Facebook or another social media site and they say, you know, I'm really trying to lose weight. You know, what should I do? And someone who practices intermittent fasting will blurt out IF. Oh, you got to do intermittent fasting. It's so great. And they say, okay, so intermittent fasting is the secret sauce to me losing weight. Even though my personality type is that I like to have a little nutritious snack every once in a while, I'm going to do intermittent fasting. So in that case, David, you can probably imagine what's going to happen with the longevity of intermittent fasting for this person who psychologically likes to have a snack every couple of hours. They're going to fail, right? So then they start to blame themselves. I'm no good. I can't do it. When in actuality, it was a mismatch of personality. The other example I'll give is somebody who's like, say it's an individual that works construction, right? So they pack their lunch every day, and they love to have a sandwich and you know, a bowl of fruit every day when they're at lunch. The sandwich fills them up because they're outside in the heat working all day, and the bowl of fruit is refreshing. And they say, hey, I want to lose weight. And, you know, they're on Facebook or on Instagram, and they say, I want to lose weight, guys. What should I do? And somebody who practices a ketogenic diet blurts out keto. Oh, man, keto is magical. It's the way to go. For those out there that aren't familiar with a ketogenic diet, it's basically when you eat protein, a very, very low or no carbohydrates. Coincidentally, the bread on the sandwich and the fruit that the man is eating at lunch, both carbohydrates, you know, and a high amount of dietary fat. I'm sorry, minimal amounts of protein, almost no carbohydrates, high amounts of dietary fat. So this guy's on keto. Now he can't have his sandwich at lunch. He can't eat his fruit at lunch, and he's miserable. So again, you can look at the longevity of that and the sustainability for that person, and it goes against the entire grain of who they are as a person, particularly in regards to their psychology revolving around their eating habits. So they fail. So that's sort of two examples of how we will take an individual, totally ignore the psychology, behavior patterns of the individual, and then try to stuff them into a nutritional box. And David, you hit the nail on the head. This is why I prefer to build it around the client in increments, slowly extending one habit at a time, so that we can sort of build a customized way of eating for the client. You know, Nikes are great. A lot of people wear Nikes. I have a pair of Nikes on right now. I wear an 8.5, which isn't a big shoe by any stretch of the imagination. But if Nike only made a 6.5 men's shoe, you know, and we went around telling people, hey, you need to buy some Nikes. And they say, well, do they have my size? Yeah, they got 6.5. Well, that's not my size. Oh, just stick your foot in there. Stuff it in there. It'll work. You know, we would think that's insane, but we do that really often with nutritional protocol. So, yeah, I agree totally, David. You know, it's much better to sort of conform this to the person than otherwise. This is a great point that you made. Great question.
I can't help but laugh with some of these examples because they're so true and they're so commonly kind of put on people. Like I see a lot of pages on social media, they're like nutrition 101 and you have to follow these rules. Or you have a friend who does keto
Yes.
and that's all they talk about. It's a really good example. Like the shoe one, like really hit the nail on the head. It's just like, wow, like I never considered it like that, but that's anyone listening to this, you won't really miss what he's saying if you think about that example of getting a shoe that doesn't fit you. It's the same as doing a nutrition protocol that doesn't fit your lifestyle or your habits or your preferences or when you work out or when you want to relax, because it can be very stressful if you do fasting and you're eating in the middle of the night.
Absolutely.
That's not really what you're all about. So it's really, really important to find that balance. You can do, like, for example, I have tried lots of things and I've been experimenting with fasting just because I want my own perspective and I was skeptical at first. And I've been doing it since around January on and off. And I found it's good because I'm never really home or in the kitchen or near the fridge. I'm always on the go. So it's easier for me to get out of the house and get to work right away, get to my clients and not having to prep. So I'll just like worry about getting lunch when I'm on my break in between clients and stuff like that. And you kind of like I'm walking around on the street all the time and I kind of go through the motions. I kind of don't think about food all the time. And for me, it's big for me to not always be thinking about food. Don't get me wrong. I love eating, but yeah, I found it was good. But I found also it takes a while. Your workouts are going to suffer for the first 2 or 3, even maybe in 4 months. Like I'm just starting to get my strength now, maybe like 6 months in. And I recently experimented with training fasted, and I found strength was a lot lower. And then I experimented with little small meals before. And then recently I found what was best for me would be alternate day fasting because I train 3 days a week. I fast on the off days, so 4 days a week. And I just eat a big meal before my workouts in the afternoons 3 days a week. And I find the strength is best. My energy is the most sustainable. And right now I have that balance. But again, if my lifestyle changes in a few months or a few years, I'm not necessarily like married to this diet. And I really like I don't know if you follow Dr. Aaron Nadolsky on Instagram. He said a cheat meal isn't a cheat. You're not married to your diet. And I love that
quote. That's a great quote. I love that. Man,
really
absolutely.
Good, powerful. But how would someone starting out implement this to their lifestyle? How would they find what works best for them? I know you both of us do like coaching to help people with that. But where would you suggest someone starts with a healthy lifestyle? Say it's day one, they want to get started. What would be the first step? Because I know for me and my clients, it's all about doing taking one small step and adding on another layer every week or every month, just to kind of not overwhelm them.
Are we speaking specifically in regards to nutrition?
It can be nutrition.
Gotcha.
Just a healthy
that's another great question, by the way. So I'll talk specifically about nutrition really briefly. You know, here's where we get into trouble with nutrition, and this is sort of exacerbated by social media because we have this nutritional concept that restriction is the way to improve our nutritional protocol. And this bleeds into general wellness and fitness as well. But you'll see, and I'll use another social media example because pretty much everybody that's going to hear this podcast is familiar with social media. You see somebody throw up a post, maybe around New Year's Eve, maybe at just random points during the year. Okay, guys, 30-day challenge. No bread, no rice, no pasta, no soda, no alcohol, no sweets, no confections, no candy for 30 days. Who's with me? And this is something that we customarily see in regards to nutrition because for the general population, for people that are not professionals in the realm of fitness or nutrition or, even psychological behaviors, they will think that the way to get to where they want to go is restriction, right? Taking something away. If I want to improve, I need to take something away. But what psychology teaches us is that when we try to remove a habit that we've associated as a bad habit, when we try to snatch that out of our life, we leave a vacuum. And something just like a space movie where something happens and something happens to the side of the ship and somebody gets sucked out of the ship, that's a vacuum, the vacuum of space. So something gets sucked in to that space when we snatch out a habit. You see this very, very customarily with people that stop smoking and start overeating. Does that make sense? They stop smoking. The next thing you know, they tend to gain weight because they've sucked out one habit and something else got sucked in outside of their control. So psychology tells us that the better way to approach this is through addition, not subtraction. So I'm not going to talk to my clients about not eating pizza. I'm going to talk to them about eating pizza and adding a glass of water. I'm not going to talk to them about not eating a McDonald's hamburger if that's a habit that they're dealing with now. I'm going to talk to them about eating a complete apple with the hamburger and the fries. Or before you eat the hamburger and the fries, that they throw an apple in somewhere. I'm not going to talk to them about not sitting on the couch all the time. I'm going to say, hey, as you're sitting on the couch, when the commercial goes on, hey, just stand up and do 5 squats. I don't want you to stop watching television. Just do 5 or 10 squats every time a commercial comes on. Just body weight squats, no weights. So we find that as we add one habit, just one simple, easy habit, the accumulation of that, just like you said, David, adding those habits over time, layering those things, which is brilliant. We find that the accumulation of the additional habit pushes the bad habits out. There's no space left for them. And it's a far, far better way to get started. So if you're sitting there on the couch now and you just dropped the Cheeto, before you pick that Cheeto up, think about adding something positive that's in line with the person that you'd like to be instead of being overly consumed with throwing the bag of Cheetos away today. Just add something in good, and it's a much, much better way to start than trying to start off by snatching bad habits away from you, because it almost never works. You try to remove a bad habit and something else just pops right in there that's equal to or worse than the habit. And the other thing to be conscious of is that when we restrict what we want to eat, it is the short path to binge behavior. So when we try to cut out all these things, it usually ends up in some sort of binging behavior, which prompts us to say the notorious phrase, oh man, I was doing so good, but I fell off the wagon. I fell off the wagon again. We find that the best way not to fall off of the proverbial wagon is to not ever embrace the wagon in the first place. Don't even get on it. No need to cut through a lot of things in your dietary protocol to make radical changes. Psychology tells us that change favors evolution, not revolution. Small evolutionary steps, much better than trying to revolutionize your way of life. You're usually going to go backwards from that at that point, if that makes sense.
Those are some very interesting perspectives you have there. I really like the point of adding, because a lot of times you're right. We just try to remove stuff, or what do I eat that's not healthy? And a lot of people try to, at first they'll try to add these detoxes and stuff, and they'll try to find the quick way out instead of looking at the bigger picture, instead of saying, I really like how you said it, just add something healthy. The water, that's a good start. It may not.
I say that's a good start.
Yeah, it is a good start, because a lot of times you want to just, again, when you avoid these things, that really brings me into the next question, because when you avoid these things, you're going to be binging and you're going to have more cravings. And my next question, we were going to talk about overcoming cravings, but I really like what you said about adding, because it's not so much, you don't want to look at what else there is to remove, but the perfect nutrition and lifestyle plan will be when there's nothing more to add. And you
absolutely.
Find that balance.
And on the subject of those cravings, which is another great question. You're hitting all the good stuff today, David. It's another great question, because people ask me all the time about craving. how can I get rid of my cravings? Why am I craving this? Why am I craving that? And there's psychology here, and there's some science here. And I'll talk about the science a little bit first because it's probably the least interesting. And I'm going to try to talk about the science without talking, quote unquote, sciencey. But, you know, one of the things that is going to impact your cravings on a physical level is sleep, which is another severely underrated part of a fitness and wellness program. Look, if you're not sleeping, lots of things are going wrong for you in regards to your fitness and wellness. And I won't get into the details. Maybe David will bring me back somewhere along the line to do and we'll talk about sleep specifically. Podcast 100. I've invited myself back, David, to Podcast 100. I want to be yeah.
All right. Sounds
yeah.
good.
I want to be the big 100 guest. But seriously, so we know that sleep deprivation leads to cravings, and here's why. Studies show that if you have even 16 to 20 hours worth of deprivation in regards to your sleep, you're just not getting good sleep. You're not getting enough sleep. You're not getting quality sleep when you do that will signal the brain, because at some point during your REM sleep, your rapid eye movement sleep, which is sort of the portion of sleep where all the brain stuff happens, the deep sleep state is where all sort of the body stuff happens. But at some point during REM sleep, our brain gets a shot of glucose, basically sugar, for those who are familiar with the term glucose. Our brain gets a shot of sugar. Now, when the sleep is interrupted or you don't get enough sleep, that portion of your brain doesn't get that little boost of sugar, that shot of sugar. So what happens the next day is you wake up with intense cravings, because if your brain has ever gotten sugar, that glucose, from anything that you've put in your body, it remembers it, guys. And I made it.
All right, we're back. So the last thing we were talking about, you were saying your brain remembers when you had that last glucose spike, and it really wants you to find whatever food, even if it's healthy, not healthy, burgers, potatoes, whatever, to kind of get you that satisfaction. Almost like, it sounds like it's kind of like a drug almost. When you don't sleep enough, it's your body kind of becomes addictive to these behaviors.
Absolutely. 100%. So your body's going to seek it out, and it's going to tell you to get it. And you can apply as much willpower as you want to. But at some point, you're probably going to give into those cravings. And this is one of the reasons why those cravings are nonstop. So that's sort of the science side of it. The psychological side goes right back to what David asked last question, and that's about, restricting. Restriction typically leads to some type of binging behavior. I won't get too deep into the subject, but for you guys out there that are listening, Google the term cognitive dietary restraint. Cognitive dietary restraint, in a nutshell, is the negative feelings surrounding food items that you associate with them as something bad, or in some cases even sinful to eat. So we create these perceptions of foods like, donuts are bad food, cookies are bad food, and in our mind we put these foods in categories of can't have, can never have, will ruin my progress, will make me fat, will make me gain weight, will make me sick, etc., etc. That cognitive way of thinking about a group of food items is called cognitive dietary restraint. It's not the same as restriction. It's not the actual physical act of not eating something. It's your thoughts surrounding those food items and how stressful it is for you to go back and forth over making decisions about eating these things. I hear this expressed to me from clients as phrases like, I'm just so afraid of food right now, or I'm just so afraid of carbohydrates. I just don't feel like I can control myself, if I eat a cookie. That is cognitive dietary restraint. And it's hooked into that is body image issues. So we know if you have body image issues that cause you to pick yourself apart psychologically, your physical self cause you to have a lot of negative self-talk about yourself in accordance with your negative self-talk about certain food groups how you feel about them, how fearful you are of them. That is a term called cognitive dietary restraint. And research shows a few startling things about that. Number one, cognitive dietary restraint will lead us to binge behavior because you're always thinking about the thing that you're not having that you can't have, which is why, as we go back to the last point, it's somewhat dangerous to start your nutrition and wellness program through restriction. So cognitive dietary restraint, research shows us that, number one, it ages us. Literally, it ages your body. There's something called telomeres, telomeres, and telomeres are sort of the indication of how old our body is, how old we are, not how long we've been on the planet, but how aged we are. Think of a telomere like a normal candle, like the long cylindrical candles, not like a super good one from Bath and Body or something, just your standard candle, and think of that candle burning down. It can never be replenished. That's what your telomeres are like. So research shows that people that have cognitive dietary restraint have a tendency to burn through their telomeres, faster in life. So it literally ages your body. Just this thought process literally ages your body. For women, and I primarily work with female clients, they have a loss of menstrual cycle associated with cognitive dietary restraint, a situation called anorexia, which is the loss of menstrual cycle. In addition to that, cognitive dietary restraint shows a reduction in bone density. So your bones literally become more brittle. All of this based on your psychology surrounding food. And in addition to that, there's an incidence of increased blood pressure and an increased amount of abdominal fat. And this is all based on cognitive dietary restraint. So you look at yourself wanting to restrict these food items, which causes all these physiological issues to happen that make it easy for you to gain weight. And then on top of that, the restriction psychologically will lead you to cravings, which cause you to binge, and can see how that's a perfect storm of fitness and wellness disaster, which is why you have to be cautious who you follow out there in regards to fitness and wellness, because people that are trying to teach you to restrict items, to go through that long list of no more candy, no more sweets, no more, pasta, no more bread, no more rice, people that are trying to engage you in restriction, they may not even know that there's such a thing as cognitive dietary restraint. But, that's one thing on the science side, the lack of sleep that can lead to that, those cravings and binge behavior. And then on the psychological side, just trying to mindfully restrict so many things out of your lifestyle is also an issue. The reality is, if you want a cookie, eat a cookie. Moderate the cookies. For me, the strategy that I use in my home, because I love baked goods, is that I always have to go out to get a baked good. So I don't have a whole cake in my house ever. I don't have a whole package of cookies in my house ever. If I want a cookie or two, I have to leave my house, go to somewhere where they sell baked cookies. I get one cookies.
It just cut out when you said you have your cookies. So that's really good. You just go and have one. And I find it's not having those impulses or those things in your house, the triggers, is what's really big, especially for me too. The triggers can be really detrimental to your progress and your mentality. So it's really good not to have those things on you. Even just don't carry it in your backpack. Just treat it as a treat, and it'll be better having cookies from Fresh Bakery than when you buy a box of cookies anyways.
Absolutely.
So if you're gonna have something you love, might as well have the best and not just little bits of crappy cookies throughout the week.
Right. And what it caused me to do is be a dessert snob. So now I only want one or two of the best cookies or a slice of the best cake, which is another benefit because it's probably made with less preservatives and less chemicals and crap in it anyway. So it's like you do yourself a double service. You're not binging on it, but you are allowing it, but you're not overdoing it. And then when you get it, it's a higher quality version of whatever the thing is. That's a really good point, David.
So for those listening who are skeptical about what Ren was talking about, the cognitive side of dieting, I have a really, really cool example. In my opinion, Cristiano Ronaldo is probably the best athlete on the planet. He was just signed with Juventus from Real Madrid. And after he did his medical at J Medical, he's actually 33 years old, but his body, they said, was 20 years old.
Right.
It's crazy, crazy stuff.
Absolutely.
I think that will really help it hit home for those out there. I'm sure he doesn't live with restriction. He burns a lot of calories. He knows what he burns. He has he's been doing this his entire life, and he's just the greatest athlete on the planet.
Agreed. Right.
One more quick question to finish off the podcast. I just wanted to talk about, I know I was reading on your Facebook page the other day, you're talking about motivation doesn't exist. And that comes back to what we've been talking about the whole time about lifestyle. So if you could quickly recap for those who didn't see your Facebook page, what you talked about and how you explained it on there.
Absolutely. And I'll keep this as short as possible. We look to motivation as some sort of deity, some sort of God-like thing that if we pray to motivation, motivation will swoop down from the heavens, get us off a couch and get us moving. And motivation isn't really a thing. Now, I do believe in motivating people. I do believe in inspiring people, but I also believe that in the context of the action in your life, motivation is never going to get it done. So a few ways that I tell people to set things up to keep them in their process, which may look like motivation, but is really building a habitual way of being, is number one, self-awareness. Know who you are. That goes back to the example that David gave about the intermittent fasting, and I gave about the intermittent fasting. Know who you are and don't even set things up that are going to go against the grain of who you are. There's plenty of dietary protocols and plenty of fitness protocols that you can use that you don't have to be forced into something that doesn't fit with who you are as a human, because it's going to be demotivating. You're going to constantly have to try to get yourself, quote unquote, up to do these things if they go against the grain of who you are. The second thing that will keep you motivated is simply not biting off more than you chew. People will sometimes complain about my program that it's too easy. Ren, I think it's too easy, Ren. It's not hard enough. I want it to be harder. And the great thing, guys, about something being too easy is that you have absolutely no reason not to do it if it's too easy. Better to do something that's too easy 2 or 3 times a week for the next 20 years of your life than to do something that's amazingly complicated, 2, 5, or 6 times per week for the next month of your life. Those two things are real keys to staying motivated, because it's the action that's going to determine the motivation. It's going to determine how well you do something. It's never the motivation that's going to prompt the action. It almost never happens the other way around. But we've got this misconception that we need to be motivated. And the third thing, really quick, is give yourself some grace. It's okay to not like exercise. It's okay. I think oftentimes, especially from our side, David, as fitness professionals, I think people think that we want them to, to be the kind of person we are, right? Like, you're not a good enough person, so you got to be more like David, or you got to be more like me, and then you'll be successful. That may or may not be true, but give yourself the grace to be like, okay, this is something that I don't like. Because, guys, let me tell you, I don't like washing the dishes in my house. I hate it. I don't like scrubbing the shower and the tub in my house. I don't like it at all. You'll never see a Facebook post of me smiling as I'm scrubbing the tub, in my home. But I do it because it's part of who I am as a human. I am a person who keeps his house clean. I don't have to love every aspect of that, but identifying with who I am allows me to do things that are congruent with who I perceive myself to be. So it's absolutely okay for you to say, man, I really hate exercising. I'm just not the type of person that gets excited in the morning when they're going to the gym, but I go to the gym. So don't feel being judged for what you don't like, because I think a lot of times people feel like, well, if I just loved it like that guy does, or if I just loved it like that girl does, I'd be better at it. It's okay to be good at something that you don't like and still not like it, because you still get the reward from it. And not fighting against the thing that you don't particularly care for will be much more motivating than it will to feel like you're somehow less of a person because you don't enjoy it. That's got to be demotivating if you feel like I'm not as good as a person because I don't like exercise. Who cares? I don't like cleaning my house or wiping down the countertops. Like I'm not into the whole, Martha Stewart vibe of decorating, but the pictures in my home are hung neatly. The counters are clean because I associate myself that way. So, cut yourself some slack, guys. A lot of you are a little too hard on yourself. It's okay not to like it. It's just not okay not to do it, if that makes sense.
I really like how you're explaining that because it really comes down to long-term consistency being more important than short-term intensity. If you're going to go hard and do these really hard workouts, you're going to burn out fast.
Absolutely.
And you're going to be sore. And especially for beginners, soreness can kind of be a turnoff. They kind of see it as pain when it's not really pain. So it's okay to start easy as long as you're consistent long-term, because the person who is going to be consistent 3-4 times a week for 6 months to a year doing easier workouts is going to do better than someone who, say, is going hard 7 days a week. You're going to burn out. It's just a matter of when and how you have the resources to sustain your approach to your healthy lifestyle.
100%. 100%.
We could go on for hours about the telomeres and the mindset, but we'll have to save that for episode 100. Thanks so much for coming on the call today. For those who don't know much about Ren, he actually has been on like the news and TV shows and talks about this stuff in front of thousands of people. So you can follow him at Fitness Jones Training, Ren Beast Mode Jones at fitnessjonestraining.com. Give him a follow on Instagram, and he'll be back for another episode for sure. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks so much for having me on the podcast, David. I really appreciate it, man. Great questions, great content. I love it, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for checking out episode 2 of the Deskbound Therapy Podcast. I'm looking forward to you hearing the rest of the episodes. Make sure to check out deskboundtherapy.com and at Deskbound Therapy on Instagram for twice a day posts on fitness, posture, and flexibility. Stay tuned for more.